I'm Seamus Earhart. I'm the assistant curator of herpetology, which is a fancy word for the study of creepy crawly things, which is reptiles and amphibians. And I'm here for the OKC Zoo at 2 with a little bit of snake food. So we have our female reticulated python. We have 2 in our habitat. People always ask her name. We all call her different things. I call her Big Girl and the other one Little Lady. She's just under 20 feet. She weighs about 140 pounds. And you can see today we decided to take her outside. So normally before the zoo opens and normal operations, we'll let her go walk around the building or crawl around the building. But since we're currently closed to the public, we thought today would be a good day for enrichment to take her outside. And you can see she really kind of likes it. You'll notice that she'll be doing a lot of tongue flicking, and that's just her kind of sensing her environment, so she'll have all these new smells. As I'm sure you probably heard, there's some geese in the background. They will eat some birds in the wild, so she might be interested in that. But right now she's kind of a little sensory overload. She hasn't been out here before, so she's kind of checking everything out. And as far as reticulated pythons go, they're known as the longest snake. They can get up to, the longest one I've ever seen was 26 feet, and that was a confirmed one. People say they can get up to 30 feet, but I've never had an official document of one that's past 26 feet. And people always say, oh, that's a huge snake, it's a big snake. We get photos and people talk about it, but usually a reticulated python that's large is around 20 or 21 feet. But people always ask about their size. I say it's kind of like people. Like, I know there's 7-foot tall people. I've never really met one. So it's the same as snakes. Like, they can't get bigger. There might be one that would reach 30 feet, so it would be kind of an anomaly. And typically they're about 20 feet. And females are a lot larger than the males. The males are smaller. And the reason that females are so large is because they have about 20 to 85 eggs when they lay eggs. So they need to have a lot of space to hold those eggs inside.
Wow. And where are they native to, Seamus?
So these guys are from Asia and Indonesia. They have a very large habitat as far as the area they're spread out among.
And about how long do they live?
Typically, I'd say in their mid-20s is an average lifespan. They have some that could live into like their early 30s. That's pretty long for a snake.
So we have a lot of viewers here. There's mixed opinions. Lots of, she's beautiful, but then there's also, I'm scared of snakes. So what do you say to people who are scared of snakes?
Snakes are more scared of you than you are of them. Every snake I've ever had to catch, I've had to chase down. And the reason why, like, even right now, she's pretty mellow. Snakes are more defensive. So they don't have arms and legs. They can't run away if something happens, so they kind of just sit back and wait. This is one of the rare snakes that have been known to eat people on a very rare occasion. But it wouldn't typically happen. But, I mean, right now we're outside. We don't handle this snake very often, so this is like kind of her natural behavior. She's just checking things out. And they have good body language to tell if they're agitated or not. They'll hiss at you if they get really upset. Or the other thing I was talking about before you guys started recording is you could tell when a snake's about to strike because they kind of pull back in this little S position. Because they can't just sit lengthened out and go forward. They need to kind of spring back and go forward. So right now I can tell she's pretty calm, she's easygoing. If she was agitated, she'll kind of hiss at you, or she'll kind of go back like this. But with reticulated pythons, they have different behaviors per individual, but typically when they're little, they're very defensive and they get really scared. And it's kind of 2 reasons for that. One is because they're little, so that everything else is huge, and so they get very nervous. And as they get bigger, they kind of know that they're a bigger animal. The other reason is when you have a snake for a long period of time, they kind of get used to what you're doing. I mean, this is a rare occasion we have her outside, but she knows that usually we're in there to either clean her habitat or give her food. And I don't smell like food right now. And you can see her kind of checking the tongue out, bringing in the surroundings.
Yeah. How many reticulated pythons do we have here at the zoo?
We have 2.
Okay.
And she's our favorite one right now. Like I was saying before, we say she's just under 20 feet. And the hardest thing is trying to measure a reticulated python. Because there are snake species that never is just out straight, they're all curved. And the best way that we do measurements is you take a string, and you hold it to the head, you kind of trace the body, and then you can measure the string afterwards.
And how long is she?
So she's just under 20 feet.
20 feet.
She can also kind of stretch out as she moves and shrink in, so that could be give or take 6 inches.
And do snakes, like, do they need to stretch out all the time, or do they prefer to kind of be cuddled up and coiled up?
So it depends on the species. This species tends to typically be more, I guess, wrapped up in a little area. Even in the wild, when you see them, they'll kind of be hiding in a corner. Snakes they have a lot of, I guess, predators in the wild, and they can get a bit nervous. So they feel most comfortable when they have their sides touching 3 areas and like an open area in front of them, so they know what to look at.
And can you kind of talk about her diet? We had shared a video that our caretaker Ray had actually taken of her eating a rabbit. About how long did that take? How often did she have rabbits? What does she eat?
Yeah, that was an awesome video.
It was.
So typically, these snakes are very large because they have a really cool metabolism. They can eat a very large animal, and it'll take sometimes up to like 3 weeks or a month for it to digest it. We feed her rabbits. We get them in frozen, we defrost them, then we feed them out. And she'll eat a rabbit, either 2 rabbits, usually every other week, something like that's our schedule for her.
All right.
So Seamus, can you talk about her patterns? She has such beautiful coloring that you can really see in the sunlight.
Yep, so that's where their name actually comes from. Reticulated python is the reticulated pattern, which looks kind of like a spider web. And you can see it's iridescent in the sun. And on the green grass, she really stands out, but in her native habitat, it blends in really well with the leaf litter. A good example of that is we have a gaboon viper in her habitat, and she blends in really well with the leaf litter, but if it's on green grass, she stands out like a sore thumb.
And do they have individual patterns that kind of you can tell them apart with, or do they all sort of have that same pattern?
They do. So, and especially like in the pet industry, they kind of breed for all these rare morphs. We don't do that in the zoo. We like her natural wild coloration. But all reticulated pythons have a little bit of variance, so we could tell who she is. She actually has a nice yellow head. Our smaller female is a gray. But you could tell by the pattern always changes on every individual.
Wow. And we talked about how long she is. So about how long does it take for her to grow that long?
So reptiles are really weird. So it really depends on the amount of food and their temperature. So if we were to give her like a lot of food every week, we gave her rabbits and we made it really warm, she'd grow very quickly. But that would typically shorten their lifespan because they lose those adolescent years or juvenile years.
Wow. Well, we have a lot of people watching. We want to thank
We do. A lot of people are
all
really interested in this.
400 people of our Facebook viewers, so thank you. One thing that we do with every OKC Zoo at 2 segment is we open up our live videos to questions. So we'll take live video questions as we're going, but also we take them previously as well. So we got some really great questions on Instagram that I want to share with you. So how many do we have here at the zoo?
We have 2 reticulated pythons.
2 reticulated pythons.
And the reason is, so if people that want to have a reticulated python at home, you have to be able to house a large 20-foot animal. So we wouldn't have more than 2 at the zoo because we really wouldn't have the space to accommodate that.
And you wouldn't recommend these guys as pets, would you?
I wouldn't. I mean, even we're very experienced herpetologists, and this is considered a 2-person animal. So if you were to have a pet at home, I would not suggest a reticulated python. They get very big. They're very good at escaping if you don't have a very tight little habitat for them. And they're also very strong. Like when we took them out here, it was me and another caretaker, and she wrapped around us really well. So you got to be able to prepare to handle a reticulated python.
And so our viewers know you do have another helper, another caretaker out here with us.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, this isn't just me. I'm not a hero.
And a common question that we receive with snakes is just kind of figuring it out, is this reticulated python, is she venomous?
No, so she's not venomous. And that would be really scary if she was. No, she's not venomous. They're constrictors, so they bite and they wrap around things very tightly. And through asphyxiation is how they kind of get their prey.
And how can you tell a venomous snake versus, what's the whole thing with poisonous versus venomous?
So poisonous versus venomous, recently they talked about there are a few poisonous snakes, which means that if you eat them, you get sick. We talk about venomous snakes, meaning that they have actual venom that they can inject into something. And you'll see a lot of things posted like, oh, you can tell by the eyes or by the scale pattern. There's a rule breaker for everything that you have. So there really is no way to tell if it's venomous unless you know that actual species.
Okay. All right. Moving on to these great questions. So that video that we did share of her eating the rabbit, one person had wondered, does it hurt her to swallow food that large?
No. So a general rule for snakes is they can eat something that's 3 times the width of the middle part of their body. And a lot of people always talk about, well, how do snakes eat such large things? Do they unhinge their jaws? And that's not actually how it works. So a snake, like we have our top jaw and our bottom jaw as a fused bone, they have 2 separate bones on the top and on the bottom, and they can open and expand them to go around. And their bones aren't actually fused together. They have tendons and ligaments, and that's what enables them to be able to stretch to eat such a large meal.
Wow.
And the idea of why would, a snake eat such a big meal is they might not see something for a month or 2. So whatever comes by, they have to be able to eat that to survive.
And did she just eat? How long ago had she had her last meal?
She ate about a week and a half ago, and we're going to feed her before we put her back in today.
Wow. About how many pounds do they eat when they do?
It really depends. Like in the wild, whatever they can get, they will try to eat. So we feed her. She's about 130 pounds. We might feed her like a 2 or 3 pound rabbit. And the idea is you can give her a large animal, but it can be a little bit stressful on them to try to eat something that big, and it takes a long time to digest. So we typically give her little smaller items so it goes through her digestion a little bit quicker, and she's a little more active in her habitat.
Awesome. And can you tell us again what her name is, how old she is, and also how old the other reticulated python we have is and her name?
Sure. So this is a big girl, and she's about just under 20 feet long, 130 pounds, and she's around 20 years old. The other female we have, I call Little Lady. She's, I think she's around 6 years old, and she's about, I'd say, a third to half the size of this one.
And how long have these guys been at the zoo?
This one's been here for about 10 years, and the other one's about 4 years.
Wow. Okay. So last question. A lot of people are kind of wondering where we are right now. Can you kind of talk about, are we by the Herp building? Where are we?
So right now, if you were looking at the front of the Herp building, we're to the right of that. We kind of filmed from this angle so you guys don't see the Turtle Plaza, which is a new area that we're working on right now.
Awesome.
So hopefully by the time you guys come down and check it out, we'll have the Turtle Plaza open, which is really nice.
All right. We're going to give you kind of a sneak peek of this over here.
Give you a little sneak peek. This is under construction right now, but our new Turtle Plaza coming soon.
Coming soon. All right. We'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today. Thank you, Seamus.
Seamus.
Thank you, Ray, for having Seamus's back.
Thank you.
And thank you, Big Girl, for being our star today. Tomorrow we're going live with our raccoon dogs, our Tanuki, who live in our Sanctuary Asia habitat. So we hope you'll tune in again at 2 p.m. tomorrow. We hope you have a splendid day. Bye, everybody.